Good evening, traveler, and welcome to Tale Clips. Tonight, you will set aside the weight of your day and step into a world of wonder. Here, the air is calm, the campfire is warm, and each story is woven to carry you gently into rest. Allow the sounds of this tale to surround you as challenges turn to triumphs and quiet magic unfolds around you. Either now or after you wake, like, subscribe, and comment any suggestions that come to mind that you'd like me to include on my channel. Your feedback is highly regarded here. Now, breathe deeply, let your mind drift, and prepare to journey where imagination and dreams meet. Tonight, the story is yours. The town greets you with silence. Not the bustling chatter of market stalls or the ringing of a blacksmith's hammer, but the kind of silence that clings to the air when hope has thinned to almost nothing. As you walk the narrow streets, your boots crunch on gravel that seems louder than it should, each step echoing between shuttered windows and doors half closed. The scent of dry earth hangs heavy, mingled with the faint trace of dust stirred by a restless wind. You see it everywhere, in the gardens where stalks lean brittle and broken, in the fields where soil crumbles to ash gray beneath the sun, in the faces of those who watch you pass. Hollow eyes peer out from behind curtains, some filled with quiet desperation, others dulled by weariness. Even the children's voices are muted, their games subdued, the weight of hunger tugging at their movements. At the town square, an ancient fountain stands at the center, carved with vines and flowers long since faded to stone. Once, it must have been a place of beauty, now, its basin is cracked, dry as bone. You pause there, sensing it as the heart of the town's sorrow, when a soft shuffle of footsteps draws your gaze. An elder approaches, wrapped in robes that seem too large for his thin frame. His back bends slightly with age, but his eyes carry a steady glow, the light of someone who remembers better days. He stops at the fountain and sets a hand on the rim, his fingers tracing the carved vines. For a moment, he does not speak. Then, in a voice weathered but firm, he tells you of the land's sickness. The soil no longer yields. Rain has become rare, as if the sky itself withholds its blessings. They have tried every known remedy, prayers, sacrifices, toil from dawn until dusk, but nothing has mended the earth. The crops fail, one by one, and soon there will be nothing left. But the elder's gaze sharpens when he speaks of a legend. Beyond the forest's edge, hidden where no ordinary eye may pierce, lies a veil, thin as mist, yet strong as iron. Behind it, the Garden of Renewal waits, a place untouched by decay, where the roots of forgotten magic still draw life from the very veins of the world. Within it grows a single seed, ancient and pure, capable of healing not only the soil but the spirits of those bound to it. No one who has sought it has ever returned. The elder studies you then, as though weighing your presence against the gravity of his words. He does not beg, he does not command. He only lets silence stretch between you, as if giving you space to decide whether you will bear the burden of this quest. The wind shifts, carrying with it a faint sound. You turn, listening. It is like a whisper, leaves rustling though no trees stand nearby. It feels as though the forest itself has leaned closer, aware of what has been spoken, aware of your presence. When you step away from the fountain, you notice how the townsfolk have gathered at a distance. None approach, but their eyes follow you with something new. Something fragile. It is not hope, not yet. But it is the memory of hope, stirred awake. You make your way to the forest edge as twilight falls. The sky bleeds into hues of gold and violet, stars blinking awake one by one. The trees loom ahead, tall and silent, their branches weaving together to form a darkened archway. Beyond lies the path that countless others once walked, but where none ever returned. The forest greets you with cool air, damp and rich with the scent of moss and earth. Each step carries you deeper, the sounds of the town fading until only the rustle of leaves and the soft call of unseen creatures remain. Your lantern casts a warm glow. Its light catching on the bark of trees that seem older than memory. Their roots twist across the path like the bones of the world, and sometimes you think you see faint glimmers in the shadows, fireflies, perhaps, or something else watching. Hours pass in the hush of the forest. The air thickens, as though unseen eyes press closer, until you reach a clearing bathed in silver light. The moon hangs full above, and in the clearing's center stands a veil. It shimmers like woven mist, a curtain of pale light rippling as though stirred by a wind that does not touch you. Behind it, shadows stir and shapes shift, flowers blooming and fading in an instant, trees bending in strange arcs, colors that do not belong to this world flaring for moments before dissolving. The air hums softly, and in your chest you feel the pull of something vast, something waiting. You step closer. The veil pulses once, a gentle rhythm like a heartbeat. For a moment, you feel it reach toward you, or not with hands, not with sound, but with presence. It is not a wall but a threshold, asking, not forcing. The lantern flickers, casting shadows that stretch long and thin across the clearing. You hear again the faint whisper of leaves, but this time the sound shapes itself into words you cannot understand. A language older than your own, carried on the breath of the forest. You stand before the veil, the night quiet around you, the path behind lost to darkness. The clearing holds its breath. The choice is yours. You lift your hand, and the veil stirs. The veil ripples under your hand like water catching the moonlight. Its surface shivers at your touch, cool but alive, as though a breath moves through it from the other side. The lantern at your side sways gently, flame bending toward the veil as if drawn to its pulse. The world behind you, the quiet forest, the faint lights of the distant town, fades to a hush so deep you hear only your own breathing and the steady beat of your heart. Then the veil opens. It does not part like fabric or door. Instead, it dissolves, threads of light unwinding into the air, unraveling until only a passage of shimmering silver remains. Beyond it lies a landscape unlike any you have ever seen. You step forward, and the world changes. The ground beneath your feet softens, the brittle earth replaced by soil warm and rich, each step sinking slightly into its dark surface. Blades of grass rise tall, glowing faintly as though lit from within, brushing against your boots with a gentle hum. The air tastes sweet, like honey and dew, each breath filling your lungs with a comfort that borders on overwhelming. It feels not only clean but alive, as if the air itself knows your presence. The trees here are not the same as those outside. Their trunks are smooth and pale, branches weaving in perfect spirals, each leaf catching starlight and bending it into glimmers of gold and violet. Some leaves drift downward, and when they touch the ground, they do not wither, they burst into tiny sparks, which float upward again, vanishing into the air. Everywhere, you sense growth, not just of plants but of time itself. Flowers bloom in clusters, their petals unfurling in mere moments, glowing before fading into seed. Vines coil and uncoil with a slow rhythm, and you realize this garden does not obey the pace of the outside world. Here, the cycle of life is unbound, rushing and slowing in patterns too vast for you to follow. The path ahead is marked by stones, smooth and circular, laid in an unbroken line. They glimmer faintly as your lantern's light touches them, guiding you deeper into the garden's heart. You begin to walk, the sound of your footsteps muted by the hum of the living world around you. Each step carries a weight of significance, as though the garden itself watches, measuring, judging. You feel its gaze most strongly when you pass a cluster of flowers unlike the others. They stand taller than you, with stems like silver glass and blossoms shaped like stars. Their petals turn as you move, following, and when you pause, they lean closer, as if listening. You reach out, brushing your fingers against one petal, and a warmth spreads through your hand, rushing up your arm and into your chest. A vision bursts behind your eyes, fields golden with wheat, children laughing, the town's fountain flowing once more. The image fades, but the ache in your heart lingers. The garden does not simply show you beauty. It shows you what is at stake. The air grows heavier as you follow the stone path further. Shadows creep at the edges of your vision, not threatening, but solemn. You pass trees whose roots twist into the shapes of faces, expressions carved by nature itself, sorrow, joy, anger, hope. One root mouth opens slightly as you pass, whispering a word you cannot understand, though its tone fills you with unease. At last, the path leads you to a vast archway grown from two entwined trees. Their branches form a canopy overhead, thick with blossoms that drip silver dew. At the arch center hangs a curtain of vines, glowing faintly blue, like threads woven from moonlight. As you step closer, a figure emerges from the shadows beyond the arch. It moves with a grace that is not human, its body tall and lithe, skin gleaming like polished bark. Its eyes glow green, steady and unblinking, and from its back sprout branches tipped with small, glowing leaves. It carries no weapon, yet its presence radiates authority and challenge. When it speaks, its voice is the rustle of leaves in a deep forest breeze. It tells you this garden is not a place for the untested. To reach the heart, you must pass through trials, not of strength alone, but of patience, of truth, of trust. Many have tried, the figure says. All have faltered. Some turned back. Others were claimed by the garden, their destinies rooted here forever. The vines of the arch sway as though echoing the figure's words. The path beyond is hidden, a mystery that only those who prove themselves may walk. Your lantern flickers again, but steadies when you place your hand upon it. You feel the elder's voice echo faintly in memory, the tale of the seed of renewal, the hope of the town, the promise of life restored. The figure steps aside, motioning to the arch. Its gaze lingers, as if measuring whether you carry the strength to pass. Behind its silence lies expectation, not unlike the hush of the townsfolk when they watched you leave. You step toward the arch, the vines glowing brighter with each pace. The air hums louder, and when you pass beneath the branches, the weight of the garden presses against your chest. The trial has begun. The path of lanterns stretched further than you first imagined, winding like a glowing serpent through the heart of the mist. Each soft flame pulsed with an almost living rhythm, as if guiding you onward through the sea of fog. The silence here wasn't empty, though. It was a silence full of presence, filled with the subtle weight of watching eyes, rustling leaves, and the occasional flutter of unseen wings. Every step you took seemed to press deeper into a realm that straddled the line between dream and waking, where time folded back on itself and every breath carried the scent of both earth and starlight. As you pressed forward, the lanterns began to change. They grew taller, their wooden posts carved with faint markings you couldn't quite decipher. At first, you thought they were cracks or scars in the wood, but as your eyes adjusted, the patterns revealed themselves, curling spirals, crescent shapes, and long flowing lines that resembled streams of water. These were not random etchings. They were runes, alive with meaning, though their language belonged to a world older than your own. Every curve and stroke pulsed faintly with golden warmth, as though responding to your presence. The ground beneath your boots softened into moss, thick and springy, muffling the sound of your steps until you felt you were drifting rather than walking. The mist swirled tighter around you, carrying whispers so faint they seemed born from your own thoughts. But no matter how far you walked, the lanterns always remained just ahead, never letting you stray too far from their soft glow. It was as though they knew you were being tested, not in strength or cunning, but in patience, in trust. Eventually, the moss gave way to stone. A staircase carved from pale granite rose before you, vanishing into the mist above. The steps were worn smooth by countless feet, though you sensed it had been centuries since anyone had last passed this way. At the base of the stairs stood a single lantern, brighter than the rest, its flame swaying in a non-existent wind. As you looked closer, you realized the fire inside wasn't ordinary. It flickered in two colors, gold and blue, twining around each other like twin serpents dancing. Taking a breath, you began to climb. Each step echoed softly, not against stone but against something vast and hollow, as though the staircase stretched through the ribs of an ancient colossus. Higher and higher you went, until the mist thinned, and a soft glow bloomed above. By the time you reached the top, you emerged into a clearing so breathtaking that even the air seemed to hold still in reverence. It was a garden, hidden above the world, suspended in twilight. Enormous trees with silver-white bark towered overhead, their branches dripping with crystalline leaves that tinkled softly in the breeze. Flowers in every shade of moonlight bloomed along the edges of winding paths, their petals glowing faintly as though they had drunk starlight instead of rain. A brook of liquid light wound through the clearing, casting ripples of pale gold across the grass. And at the center of it all stood a great stone circle, carved from the same granite as the stairs, its surface etched with more of those mysterious runes. You approached the circle slowly, your eyes drawn to a faint shimmer at its heart. There, suspended in the air, was a key, not made of iron or gold, but of something more elusive. Its form shifted as you watched, flickering between crystal, flame, and shadow. You understood without being told that this was no ordinary object. This was the key the forest had whispered about, the one that would open doors you had never even imagined. As you reached out, the air vibrated, and the ground beneath your feet seemed to hum. The runes around the circle lit up one by one, spreading outward like ripples on water. The silver trees bent slightly, as though bowing in acknowledgement, and the flowers turned their faces toward you. The brook's light surged brighter, casting reflections that danced across the stone. The key lowered slowly into your hand, weightless yet solid, and the moment it touched your skin, the entire garden shifted. The mist dissolved completely, revealing a sky unlike any you had ever seen. It was not day, not night, but a vast ocean of color, deep purples, shifting blues, streaks of pale green, and specks of light that moved like living constellations. The stars above you did not remain fixed in place but swirled slowly in patterns, as if drawing maps only they could read. With the key in your grasp, you felt warmth spread up your arm and into your chest. It wasn't a heat that burned, but one that soothed, as though your very heartbeat had been aligned with the rhythm of the forest. You felt whole, as if something you hadn't known was missing had just been restored. But the peace lasted only a moment before the ground trembled. From the edge of the garden came a deep rumble, low and resonant, like a drumbeat from beneath the earth. The silver trees shivered, their crystalline leaves cascading in a glittering rain. The brook of light pulsed wildly, spilling over its banks. And then, from the shadows beyond the stone circle, you saw it, a figure emerging, slow and deliberate. It wasn't entirely human, though it carried the shape of one. Its body was formed of mist and starlight, shifting and flowing, with no fixed outline. Its eyes glowed white, and where its feet touched the ground, the grass withered only to bloom again in the same instant. It spoke no words, yet its presence pressed into your mind like a weight of history, of memory, of something eternal. You realized, with a chill and a shiver of awe, that this was the guardian of the key, the being who had waited centuries for someone worthy to claim it. And now it was stepping closer. The guardian advanced slowly, its form rippling like water disturbed by a hidden current. Though it bore no mouth, no voice, its presence filled your thoughts with echoes that weren't quite words but carried meaning all the same. "Why have you come?" The question resonated not in sound but in the hollow of your chest, vibrating in your bones. "Why do you hold the key?" The weight of its gaze pressed against you, sharp and yet strangely tender, as if it were peeling away every layer of who you were to reveal the truth beneath. Instinct urged you to step back, to retreat, but something stronger rooted your feet to the mossy stone. The lanterns that had guided you here flickered in your memory, their flames whispering of trust, of patience, of unseen hands that had lit them long before your arrival. You did not flinch. The guardian circled the stone circle like a storm measuring its prey. Wherever it passed, the flowers bent toward it, their glowing petals trembling. The silver trees chimed softly in the windless air. At last, it stopped before you, and from its shifting body extended a single hand, if it could be called that, a shape woven of light and smoke. It hovered inches from your chest, waiting, testing. The key in your hand pulsed once, twice, and then glowed brighter, illuminating every rune etched into the stone beneath your feet. With a steady breath, you lifted the key and placed it against the guardian's hand. For an instant, everything went silent. Even your heartbeat seemed to halt. Then, the world fractured into light. You were no longer in the garden. You were standing in a memory. The air was thick with incense and firelight, the crackle of torches illuminating a chamber carved deep within a mountain. Around you stood dozens of figures robed in silver and indigo, their faces painted with the same spirals and crescents you had seen etched on the lantern posts. They chanted in unison, their voices rising and falling like the tide. At the center of their circle floated the very same key, suspended above an altar of obsidian. Their chants grew louder until the sound became unbearable, pressing into your skull, and then sudden silence. A single figure stepped forward, their robe heavier than the others, trimmed in gold. They raised their arms, and in the silence, their words rang clear. This key is no weapon, no crown, no chain. It is a path. Only one who seeks not for power, but for truth, may carry it beyond the veil. The vision shattered like glass, and you were back in the garden. The guardian still stood before you, its hand upon the key, but now its glow had softened. It bowed its head slightly, acknowledging you not as an intruder but as a chosen traveler. The key warmed in your palm, no longer shifting but settling into a form you recognized, an elegant piece of crystal shaped like a feather, light as air yet thrumming with endless possibility. The guardian stepped back into the shadows, dissolving until only starlight remained. The stone circle dimmed, its runes fading, and the silver trees released a final chiming sigh before growing still. The garden seemed quieter now, almost reverent, as though it, too, recognized that the moment had passed. You were left alone, standing beneath the swirling sky, the key clasped firmly in your hand. A path opened ahead, where before there had been none. The brook of light spilled forward, curving into the distance, its surface shimmering with shifting images. You saw glimpses of forests, mountains, and seas, lands you had never walked but somehow felt connected to. The brook was not just a stream. It was a road, a flowing passage into realms beyond the one you knew. And deep within, you understood, this was only the beginning. The air stirred, carrying the faintest whisper across your ear. It was not the guardian's voice, nor the chant of the robed figures, but something older, softer, like the earth itself speaking. Walk, traveler. The lanterns will find you still. The path is long, but you are not alone. You tightened your grip on the feather-shaped key and stepped onto the brook. The light rippled beneath your feet but held firm, bearing your weight as though it had been waiting for you all along. With each step, the garden dimmed behind you, the mist rose once more, and the world unfolded into something new. Color swirled around you, richer than any dawn, deeper than any dusk. You were walking not across land but across the fabric of dreams themselves, guided by a key that had chosen you, by lanterns that had led you, by a destiny that was still writing itself with every stride. And somewhere far ahead, hidden beyond the haze of time and space, a new horizon waited, one that promised answers, challenges, and a truth greater than you had ever dared to imagine. The forest deepened, drawing you further from the quiet lantern circle where you had first heard the child's voice. The air shifted with each step, heavier now, laced with an old kind of magic that hummed through the ground and whispered from the branches above. Leaves stirred though no wind moved them, and your senses sharpened, attuned to every sound, every glimmer of light. The key at your side pulsed like a heartbeat, steady and sure, pulling you toward something ahead, something just beyond your reach. You followed the faint trail the lanterns left behind, their glow weaving through the trees like threads of gold. Yet the deeper you went, the stranger the forest became. Roots twisted unnaturally across the path, curling like the fingers of sleeping giants. Moss clung to stones in patterns that resembled eyes, and when you passed, they seemed to watch you, lids half closed in silent judgment. Pools of water reflected skies that didn't belong, suns that rose in colors no name could hold, constellations foreign to your memory. But through it all, there was no malice. The forest was not trying to frighten you, it was measuring you. Each oddity seemed like a test, a quiet question whispered beneath the bark. Do you belong here? Will you keep walking, even when the way bends against what you know? You pressed onward. The voice returned, faint and fleeting, as though carried on the breath of the earth itself. Sometimes it was a laugh, bright and quick, like the sound of a brook leaping over stones. Sometimes it was a call, soft but urgent, as though Elira were just beyond the next bend. Each time you quickened your pace, each time you reached for the sound, and each time it slipped just a little farther ahead. The lanterns led you into another clearing, but this one was different. Instead of stones or water, a massive tree stood at its heart, its trunk wide enough that 3 houses could have fit side by side within its girth. Its bark was etched with glowing veins of silver, like rivers flowing through ancient wood. Branches stretched outward and upward, vanishing into the canopy, their leaves glowing faintly blue as though catching light from a hidden sky. At the tree's base rested a figure, not Elira, but something else. It looked like a statue carved from wood, its form humanoid but tall and slender, with features too smooth to be mortal. Its eyes were closed, hands folded across its chest, and from its back spread wings of leaves that trembled though no breeze stirred. For a long moment it seemed only an ornament of the tree, part of the living monument. Then its eyes opened, glowing like twin lanterns. You carry the key, the figure said, its voice not loud but resonant, echoing through your bones. Few are chosen to walk this path. Fewer still endure it. You froze, the weight of its gaze pressing against you. Yet it was not threatening, it was curious, contemplative, as though it were seeing beyond your form, into the memory of the brook, the lanterns, the village's hope. Elira, you said softly. The name alone felt like an offering, a reason, a plea. The guardian's head tilted slightly, and for the first time, a flicker of something like sorrow crossed its face. The child has entered the heart of the forest. Not by chance, not by will, but by call. The veil between worlds has grown thin, and those with light in their hearts are drawn toward it. She has wandered where few may go, where fewer return. You stepped closer, the key glowing brighter, its hum joining the guardian's words like a chord in a larger song. Can I find her? You asked, though the question already felt answered in your chest. The guardian studied you for a long time, its glowing eyes flickering like flames. Then, slowly, it lifted a hand and pointed toward the roots of the great tree. There, a passage yawned open, a hollow that sloped downward into shadows so deep they seemed almost liquid. The air that rose from it was cool and damp, carrying the faintest echo of a child's laughter. Below lies the threshold, the guardian said. It is where echoes gather, where truths and illusions entwine. To step into it is to be weighed, to be tested. You will see the child again, but only if your light does not falter. You felt the villagers' hope pressing on you once more, the warmth of their faith mingling with the hum of the key. You nodded. The guardian's expression softened, almost imperceptibly. Its eyes closed, and it sank back into stillness, its form merging again with the great tree as though it had never moved at all. The glowing veins along the bark pulsed once, in rhythm with your heartbeat, then dimmed. The forest fell silent. You turned toward the hollow, the darkness waiting like an ocean's depth. The lanterns above swayed, casting faint glimmers that stretched down into the opening, but they could not pierce far. This was not a place to be lit by ordinary means. The light you carried within yourself, the steady glow of the key, would be the only guide. Stepping forward, you crossed into the hollow. Roots arched overhead, forming a tunnel that twisted and narrowed as you descended. The air grew cooler, heavier, filled with the scent of earth and stone. Shadows shifted along the walls, some shaped like branches, others like faces half-formed. The laughter came again, clearer this time, ringing like a bell. You pressed onward, and the tunnel opened into a cavern vast enough to hold the entire village above. Its walls glittered with crystals that pulsed faintly, breathing in time with the earth. A river of light flowed through the cavern floor, winding like a serpent, its glow reflecting on the ceiling in endless ripples. At the river's edge stood a lantern unlike any you had seen before, its frame of silver branches, its flame pure white, unwavering. And beside it, a shadow. Small, slight, almost fragile. A child's silhouette. "Elira," you whispered, and the shadow turned. But it did not run to you. It lingered at the lantern's side, watching, silent. And as you stepped closer, the river of light surged, a wall of radiance rising between you and the child. The cavern shook, and from the glow shapes began to form, creatures of flame and shadow, illusions given body, trials given teeth. The threshold had awakened. The test had begun. The forest deepened, drawing you further from the quiet lantern circle where you had first heard the child's voice. The air shifted with each step, heavier now, laced with an old kind of magic that hummed through the ground and whispered from the branches above. Leaves stirred though no wind moved them, and your senses sharpened, attuned to every sound, every glimmer of light. The key at your side pulsed like a heartbeat, steady and sure, pulling you toward something ahead, something just beyond your reach. You followed the faint trail the lanterns left behind, their glow weaving through the trees like threads of gold. Yet the deeper you went, the stranger the forest became. Roots twisted unnaturally across the path, curling like the fingers of sleeping giants. Moss clung to stones in patterns that resembled eyes, and when you passed, they seemed to watch you, lids half closed in silent judgment. Pools of water reflected skies that didn't belong, suns that rose in colors no name could hold, constellations foreign to your memory. But through it all, there was no malice. The forest was not trying to frighten you, it was measuring you. Each oddity seemed like a test, a quiet question whispered beneath the bark. Do you belong here? Will you keep walking, even when the way bends against what you know? You pressed onward. The voice returned, faint and fleeting, as though carried on the breath of the earth itself. Sometimes it was a laugh, bright and quick, like the sound of a brook leaping over stones. Sometimes it was a call, soft but urgent, as though Elira were just beyond the next bend. Each time you quickened your pace, each time you reached for the sound, and each time it slipped just a little farther ahead. The lanterns led you into another clearing, but this one was different. Instead of stones or water, a massive tree stood at its heart, its trunk wide enough that 3 houses could have fit side by side within its girth. Its bark was etched with glowing veins of silver, like rivers flowing through ancient wood. Branches stretched outward and upward, vanishing into the canopy, their leaves glowing faintly blue as though catching light from a hidden sky. At the tree's base rested a figure, not a lyra, but something else. It looked like a statue carved from wood, its form humanoid but tall and slender, with features too smooth to be mortal. Its eyes were closed, hands folded across its chest, and from its back spread wings of leaves that trembled though no breeze stirred. For a long moment it seemed only an ornament of the tree, part of the living monument. Then its eyes opened, glowing like twin lanterns. "You carry the key," the figure said, its voice not loud but resonant, echoing through your bones. "Few are chosen to walk this path. Fewer still endure it." You froze, the weight of its gaze pressing against you. Yet it was not threatening, it was curious, contemplative, as though it were seeing beyond your form, into the memory of the brook, the lanterns, the villagers' hope. "Elira," you said softly. The name alone felt like an offering, a reason, a plea. The guardian's head tilted slightly, and for the first time, a flicker of something like sorrow crossed its face. "The child has entered the heart of the forest. Not by chance, not by will, but by call. The veil between worlds has grown thin, and those with light in their hearts are drawn toward it. She has wandered where few may go, where fewer return." You stepped closer, the key glowing brighter, its hum joining the guardian's words like a chord in a larger song. "Can I find her?" you asked, though the question already felt answered in your chest. The guardian studied you for a long time, its glowing eyes flickering like flames. Then, slowly, it lifted a hand and pointed toward the roots of the great tree. There, a passage yawned open, a hollow that sloped downward into shadows so deep they seemed almost liquid. The air that rose from it was cool and damp, carrying the faintest echo of a child's laughter. "Below lies the threshold," the guardian said. "It is where echoes gather, where truths and illusions entwine. To step into it is to be weighed, to be tested. You will see the child again, but only if your light does not falter." You felt the villagers' hope pressing on you once more, the warmth of their faith mingling with the hum of the key. You nodded. The guardian's expression softened, almost imperceptibly. Its eyes closed, and it sank back into stillness, its form merging again with the great tree as though it had never moved at all. The glowing veins along the bark pulsed once, in rhythm with your heartbeat, then dimmed. The forest fell silent. You turned toward the hollow, the darkness waiting like an ocean's depth. The lanterns above swayed, casting faint glimmers that stretched down into the opening, but they could not pierce far. This was not a place to be lit by ordinary means. The light you carried within yourself, the steady glow of the key, would be the only guide. Stepping forward, you crossed into the hollow. Roots arched overhead, forming a tunnel that twisted and narrowed as you descended. The air grew cooler, heavier, filled with the scent of earth and stone. Shadows shifted along the walls, some shaped like branches, others like faces half-formed. The laughter came again, clearer this time, ringing like a bell. You pressed onward, and the tunnel opened into a cavern vast enough to hold the entire village above. Its walls glittered with crystals that pulsed faintly, breathing in time with the earth. A river of light flowed through the cavern floor, winding like a serpent, its glow reflecting on the ceiling in endless ripples. At the river's edge stood a lantern unlike any you had seen before, its frame of silver branches, its flame pure white, unwavering. And beside it, a shadow. Small, slight, almost fragile. A child's silhouette. "Elira," you whispered, and the shadow turned. But it did not run to you. It lingered at the lantern's side, watching, silent. And as you stepped closer, the river of light surged, a wall of radiance rising between you and the child. The cavern shook, and from the glow shapes began to form, creatures of flame and shadow, illusions given body, trials given teeth. The threshold had awakened. The test had begun. The sun was little more than a pale memory now, washed out by the lavender haze of twilight that stretched across the valley. Elira and her small company moved carefully along a stony path that wound down the ridge, every step echoing with the weight of both progress and uncertainty. The castle on the horizon still loomed in the distance, its jagged silhouette black against the dying light, yet closer now, no longer a dream but an inevitability. The air grew cooler, threading fingers of mist along the trail. Birds retreated into the trees, their last songs fading into the hush. Even the crickets waited for true night before beginning their symphony, leaving the world eerily quiet. It was in that quiet that Elira found herself listening, more than to her companions, more than to the whisper of the grass in the wind, listening for something deeper, as though the earth itself meant to speak. And in a way, it did. She felt a vibration beneath her boots, subtle but steady, the hum of old magic woven into the land. Kale, trudging behind her, noticed her slowing. "You feel it too, don't you?" His voice was low, careful not to disturb the stillness. Elira nodded, eyes narrowing on the castle. "It's not just stone and mortar. The whole valley hums with it. This isn't merely where the Shadow King lives, it's where he draws power." Mara tightened her cloak against the breeze, muttering, "Then it's a good thing we came prepared. Or at least, as prepared as anyone can be for this." She clutched the leather satchel close, the runic scrolls inside faintly glowing as though answering the energy in the ground. The group continued, and the path soon led them to a hollow at the base of the ridge where a stream glided through mossy rocks. They paused to rest, filling water skins and letting the chill water touch their lips. Elira crouched by the stream, her reflection wavered but clear enough, eyes sharp, shoulders burdened yet unbroken. She stared for a moment too long, and in the shimmer of water she thought she saw another face overlaying hers, older, regal, crowned with silver light. She blinked and the vision was gone, replaced by ripples. "See something?" Kale asked gently. "Maybe," Elira whispered, though her heart raced. She wondered if the vision was a warning or a promise. Either way, it urged her onward. Night fell fully as they marched again, and with it came the music of insects and the occasional call of a night bird. But threaded into those natural sounds was something unnatural, a faint chiming, like crystal struck by a breath of wind. At first it was distant, indistinct, but soon it grew clearer, surrounding them. The group froze, hands on weapons, eyes darting into the mist. From the fog stepped figures, tall, robed, faces hidden beneath hoods. They moved with a slow grace, their hands outstretched. Symbols glowed faintly on their palms, casting pale light. They did not speak, but their presence carried meaning all the same. Guardians, Ilara thought, protectors bound to this valley. Stand ready, she murmured to her companions. But the figures did not attack. Instead, one stepped forward and extended a hand toward Ilara, palm glowing brighter. The chiming deepened, harmonizing like a chorus of bells. Ilara hesitated, but something in her heart urged her forward. She stepped close enough to meet the figure's hand with her own. The glow spread, warm and electric, rushing through her arm and flooding her chest. She gasped as images exploded in her mind, memories of warriors long past, of battles fought on this very ground, of the eternal struggle between light and shadow. She saw herself in those visions, not just a traveler but a continuation of something ancient. When the light faded, the figures lowered their hands. As silently as they appeared, they drifted back into the mist, vanishing like phantoms. The chiming lingered for a breath, then faded into the night. Kale broke the silence. So, we're not the first. No, Ilara said softly, still trembling from the vision. But maybe we'll be the last. She straightened, resolve etched into her expression. We must not fail. Not this time. They moved again, hearts pounding with renewed urgency. The castle seemed closer than ever, its walls glinting with moonlight. For the first time, Ilara sensed that every step forward was being watched, judged, not only by her companions, not only by the Shadow King, but by all who had come before. And perhaps, by those yet to come. She gripped the hilt of her sword, feeling its familiar weight, and whispered into the night, I will not falter. And with that vow, they pressed on, toward the heart of darkness. The moon climbed higher, its pale glow silvering the stones underfoot as Ilara and her companions pushed deeper into the valley. The closer they drew to the looming fortress, the heavier the air became, as if each breath pressed against an unseen weight. The ground was softer here, the grass damp, shadows stretching unnaturally long as if pulled toward the castle itself. Ilara felt the pulse of magic again, stronger now, steady and rhythmic like a heartbeat that was not her own. She paused at a rise in the land, gazing at the towering walls ahead. Black spires jutted upward, their tops vanishing into the clouds. The fortress looked less built than grown, as though stone itself had answered a dark command and twisted into shape. Kale stopped beside her, his eyes sharp beneath the hood of his cloak. That thing, it doesn't belong here. It's like the land is sick because of it. Mara stepped forward, her satchel glowing faintly with the runes within. The Shadow King doesn't just rule from it. He feeds through it. We'll be walking straight into the mouth of his power. Then let's not waste time, Ilara said, though her voice trembled slightly. The group descended from the rise, following the trail until it opened into a barren clearing. Nothing grew here. No trees, no grass, only cracked soil veined with black lines that pulsed faintly. At the center of the clearing, a massive gate stood embedded in the outer wall of the fortress. The gate was bound with iron thicker than a man's arm, engraved with runes that glowed faintly red. They halted at the edge of the clearing, silence stretching between them. The gate looked like a challenge, a dare. "It's sealed," Mara murmured, her hand hovering over the runes. "Not by ordinary locks. Breaking this won't be easy." Before anyone could speak, the ground shuddered. From the cracked soil rose shapes, hulking figures of stone and shadow, their eyes blazing like embers. Guardians, but not like the silent figures from the valley. These were creatures meant to kill. Kale drew his blade in one smooth motion. "Here we go." The first creature lunged, swinging a massive arm of jagged stone. Ilara dodged aside, rolling across the cracked earth before rising with her sword flashing. Steel met shadowed stone with a shriek, sparks scattering. The creature barely staggered. Kale met the second one head-on, his blade striking hard, each blow forcing the thing backward but never breaking it. Mara, standing behind them, flung open her satchel and ripped a scroll free. The parchment glowed, symbols lifting into the air like fireflies before blasting forward in arcs of white light. The creatures hissed, their forms sizzling as the runes burned through their bodies. Still, more rose. The ground seemed endless in its supply of monsters. Ilara's arm ached, sweat stinging her eyes, but she pressed forward, each strike fueled not only by will but by the memory of the valley's vision. She was not fighting alone, not truly. Every warrior before her seemed to guide her hand, their strength flowing into her swing. One creature staggered, its chest cracked open, and Kale drove his blade deep into the fracture. With a thunderous crack, the monster collapsed into rubble and mist. Two down, Kale grunted, spinning to face another. Mara unleashed another scroll, her voice rising in an incantation. The parchment flared white-hot, and a pillar of light shot upward, slamming down on the battlefield. Several creatures disintegrated instantly, their bodies collapsing like sandcastles against a tide. But the largest one remained. Twice the size of the others, its form gleamed with obsidian shards, and its ember eyes burned hotter than the rest. It raised both arms, smashing them into the ground with an impact that sent the group sprawling. Ilara rolled to her knees, heart pounding. The giant guardian loomed over them, its chest runes blazing crimson. "We need to strike at the core," she shouted. Kale nodded, already sprinting forward, dodging massive stone fists that shattered the ground wherever they landed. Mara's voice rang out behind him, channeling another spell to distract the beast. Ilara tightened her grip and followed Kale, every nerve alive, every breath a prayer. Together, they aimed for the glowing chest, their blades and spells converging in a single strike. The guardian let out a roar like cracking mountains, then shattered into a storm of stone and shadow, the fragments dissolving into nothingness. Silence fell. Only the faint hum of the fortress remained. Mara collapsed to her knees, sweat dripping. That was only the door. Ilara stared at the massive gate, its red runes now dimming, the lock broken by the fall of its guardians. Slowly, with a groan like thunder, the iron doors began to creak open. Darkness yawned within, vast and hungry. And yet, beyond that darkness, destiny waited. The gates groaned open wider, the sound echoing like a dying bell through the valley. Beyond lay only blackness, a void so deep it seemed to drink in the light of moon and stars. For a moment, no one moved. The three of you stood at the threshold, caught between the known dangers behind and the unknown horrors ahead. The clearing was silent now, save for the slow creak of metal. Even the wind had stopped, as though the world itself held its breath. Ilara's hand tightened around her sword hilt, the leather warm from her grip. Her heart pounded against her ribs, a relentless reminder of what it meant to be alive, and what she stood to lose. Cale broke the silence first, his voice low, almost reverent. "We're not turning back now." "No," Ilara agreed. The word came out steady, though her stomach twisted with fear. Mara lifted herself from the ground, her face pale but resolute. "The wards are broken, but they'll reform with time. This is our only chance. Once we enter, there will be no retreat." A heavy truth, but one they already knew. Ilara took the first step forward, her boot sinking slightly into the dark soil as she crossed the threshold. The air changed instantly, heavy and cold, pressing against her chest like an unseen weight. Cale followed close behind, his hand brushing the hilt of his blade. Mara came last, muttering faint prayers as she passed under the arch of the gate. Inside, the fortress was vast. The walls curved upward into shadow, their tops unseen. The ground stretched in endless flagstones, each one engraved with runes worn smooth by time. No torches burned here. No lanterns flickered. And yet there was light, a faint, sourceless glow that painted everything in hues of grey and blue, like the world beneath a storm at dusk. The hum of power was louder now, filling their bones, vibrating in their teeth. Ilara swallowed hard, her eyes darting across the emptiness. At the center of the great hall, a staircase spiraled upward into the dark. Its steps were impossibly tall, each one wide enough to hold a wagon. "That's where he waits," Mara said softly, her gaze locked on the stairs. "The throne chamber will be at the top." Cale exhaled slowly, his hand brushing over his chest where sweat clung to his tunic. "Then we climb." They crossed the hall cautiously, each step sending echoes through the emptiness. Shadows shifted at the edges of their vision, but when they turned, there was nothing, only more stone, more dark. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the sound of their boots. Halfway across, Ilara froze. There was a whisper. Soft at first, barely audible. A voice like silk brushing against her ears. "Ilara." Her head snapped around. No one was there. Yet the voice came again, stronger. "You've come so far, why suffer more? Lay down your sword, let the darkness cradle you." She shivered, her grip tightening. "Did you hear that?" she asked, her voice harsh. Cale frowned. "Hear what?" Mara's eyes widened suddenly. "He's trying to break you. Don't listen. Whatever you hear, whatever you see, it's not real." The whispers grew louder, no longer soft but insistent, crawling into her mind, wrapping around her thoughts like vines. They promised rest. They promised release. A chance to stop fighting, to stop bleeding, to stop carrying the weight of lives and legends. "Ilara!" Mara's hand clamped around her wrist, grounding her, pulling her back. The whispers faltered, then hissed, retreating like smoke into shadow. Ilara sucked in a breath, her chest heaving. Her legs trembled, but she forced herself forward again. "I'm fine," she lied. Cale's gaze lingered on her, sharp and knowing, but he said nothing. They reached the base of the staircase. From here, the steps loomed impossibly tall, their edges chipped with age, their surfaces worn smooth. The spiral rose into the dark, twisting higher and higher until it vanished completely. One step at a time, Cale muttered, and he began to climb. The ascent was grueling. Each step felt heavier than the last, as though unseen hands pushed against them, dragging them down. The hum of magic vibrated stronger with each rise, until it felt like walking inside the heartbeat of a giant. Shadows crawled along the walls, slithering upward, mocking their pace. At times, the staircase seemed endless. The top never drew closer, only the same curve, the same stone. Time itself felt twisted, stretched thin. Their legs burned. Their lungs ached. And still, they climbed. Finally, after what felt like hours, the spiral opened into another vast chamber. Here, the sourceless glow was brighter, bathing the room in eerie silver. At its center stood a throne of obsidian, jagged and sharp as broken glass. The figure seated upon it was cloaked in shadow, only his eyes visible, burning like coals, ancient and cruel. The Shadow King. He did not rise. He did not move. He simply watched, his gaze piercing through them as though stripping away their flesh, peeling back their souls to bear the raw truth within. Ilara's breath caught in her throat. Every instinct screamed to flee, to kneel, to surrender. Yet her hand rose to her sword instead, fingers trembling but steady on the hilt. The Shadow King smiled. It was a small thing, but it carried the weight of centuries. His voice, when it came, was not loud but filled the chamber nonetheless. At last, he said, his tone both mocking and welcoming. "The child of starlight arrives. Come, little flame. Show me if you can burn away the dark." The chamber trembled, and the throne's obsidian edges gleamed sharper. Power coiled around him like a storm ready to break. And in that moment, Ilara knew the true battle had only just begun. The Shadow King rose from his throne with a sound like mountains shifting. His form towered above you, a silhouette of obsidian and fire, a void wrapped in flesh. His eyes burned brighter now, casting red light across the silver glow of the chamber, and when he stepped forward the stone trembled beneath his weight. "Do you feel it?" his voice thundered, carrying both mockery and promise. "This is the heart of eternity. Every soul, every whisper, every forgotten dream, they all flow through me. You stand against the tide of time itself. Your knees threatened to buckle, but you did not yield." Cale moved closer to your side, sword bared, though his knuckles whitened around the hilt. Mara raised her staff, the faint glow of ward shimmering like fragile glass between you and the towering figure. "You forced your voice steady. You've ruled long enough. Tonight, this ends." The king laughed, deep and cold, like the cracking of ice. "Ends? No, little flame. Tonight, you join me." His hand lifted, and shadows surged outward like a flood. They rose in tendrils, clawing across the stone, reaching for you with hands that were not hands, faces that were not faces. Screams echoed in the darkness, not from the living, but from memories of all he had consumed. Kale leapt forward, cutting through the shadows, his blade leaving streaks of silver light in its wake. Mara's staff flared, releasing bursts of radiant energy that pushed the darkness back, but each wave returned, stronger and hungrier. The king advanced, and with each step the chamber grew colder, until frost began to creep across the stones at your feet. You gripped your sword tighter. It pulsed in your hand, not with fear, but with something deeper, older, like a heartbeat answering your own. You remembered the words of the elder in the village, "The flame is not found. It is chosen." And you understood. The whispers that had haunted you through the fortress, the temptation to rest, to surrender, they had been the shadows of doubt, feeding on your exhaustion. But beneath them, there was always something else, waiting patiently. The flame wasn't something given. It was something you chose to kindle, again and again, no matter how heavy the dark pressed in. You lifted your blade. Light erupted. Not just silver this time, but gold, bright and searing. It spilled across the chamber, banishing the gloom in a single sweep. The shadows recoiled, shrieking, their forms unraveling like smoke. The Shadow King staggered, his burning eyes narrowing, his grin faltering for the first time. "No," he growled, voice laced with disbelief. "You cannot carry the flame. You are mortal. Fragile. Dust in the wind." "Maybe," you said, stepping forward, your voice carrying over the roar of unraveling dark. "But tonight, I am enough." You charged. Kale moved with you, his silver blade cutting arcs of light that carved through the tide. Mara's voice rang out in incantation, weaving barriers that funneled the shadows away. And you, with your flame, cut straight toward the throne. The king's arm lashed out, a wave of obsidian spears erupting from the ground. But your blade met them, each shattering under the force of your swing. Sparks and light flew in every direction, lighting the chamber like a storm of stars. The Shadow King roared, a sound that shook stone and sky. His hand raised once more, and from it burst a torrent of fire blacker than night. It surged toward you, swallowing the chamber in its path. For a heartbeat, it seemed inevitable that nothing could withstand such power. But you raised your sword high, the flame within blazing bright. Gold light flared, meeting the black fire head-on. The two forces collided, the clash ringing like a bell that echoed across worlds. For a moment, neither side yielded, a storm of shadow and flame tearing at the edges of reality itself. Then your flame surged brighter, fueled not by power alone, but by will, by every step that brought you here, every life that depended on your strength, every refusal to yield when the dark whispered surrender. The black fire split. The chamber shook violently as the Shadow King staggered, his form cracking like shattered glass. He screamed, not in rage this time, but in fear. "No, this world, it is mine." Your sword struck true. The light poured through him, bursting from his chest in a beam that filled the throne room and shot skyward, piercing even the fortress walls above. The Shadow King's form crumbled, his body dissolving into ash and wind. His eyes, once burning, dimmed into nothing. And then, Silence. The fortress groaned as though relieved of its burden. The hum of oppressive magic faded, leaving behind only stillness. The shadows fled, retreating into cracks, dissolving like mist in sunlight. The throne stood empty. Your knees buckled, but Kale caught your arm, steadying you. His face was pale, exhausted, but his eyes burned with awe. Mara lowered her staff, tears running freely down her cheeks as she whispered, "It's done." You stepped toward the throne. The obsidian seat was cracked now, lifeless. Upon it lay only a shard of crystal, faintly glowing with the last remnants of the flame. You picked it up, and it pulsed once in your hand, warm, alive, before sinking into your chest, merging with the fire already within you. The gates behind you creaked, wide open now, the path back to the valley bathed in silver moonlight. The night air spilled into the chamber, cool and fresh, carrying the scent of pine and soil. For the first time in what felt like centuries, the fortress was free. You descended the spiral, every step lighter than the one before. Outside, the villagers waited, eyes wide, torches clutched in trembling hands. When they saw you emerge, Kale at your side, Mara behind you, the crowd erupted in cries of joy and relief. Children rushed forward, laughter breaking the silence of fear that had haunted them for generations. Elders wept openly, thanking you with voices raw with gratitude. The village bells rang through the night, not in mourning, but in triumph. And you, though weary, though scarred, felt the flame within burn steady and strong. You had faced the endless dark. You had stood against eternity itself. And you had prevailed. The night sky stretched above, infinite and bright with stars. For the first time in countless years, the valley could dream again. And so could you.